he says here again in verse 4, say to him, take care, be calm, have no fear. Say that with me. Take care, be calm, and have no fear. Amen. To take care means to watch over, to keep, to preserve, and to guard. To watch over, to keep, to preserve, and to guard. Take care, take watch, take careful watch over these things. It's the same word that God used when he spoke to Adam in the garden, and he said, keep the garden. That's what he was saying. Take care, watch over it, guard it, protect it. Now we know Adam didn't. Now, the garden, things that grow in the garden come from the soil. So the soil is the place where the garden grows. The seeds get planted in the soil, and the garden grows out of the soil. Out of our spirit produces fruit. Is that right? So that's why we have in Proverbs 4:23, watch over your heart with all diligence, for out of your heart, out of that spirit, out of that soil will produce the forces of life. Whether there are good forces or bad forces, your spirit will produce it. So watch what you put in there. Take care, protect, and guard that soil. Don't let anything get in there, because it will produce. It is programmed to produce. It's the way God made it. Take care. Be calm. The word be calm means to be still, be quiet, and to be undisturbed. To be still, to be quiet, and to be undisturbed. Okay? Take care. Be calm. Be still. Be quiet. Be undisturbed. You know, Jesus said, in the world you have tribulation, but take courage, I've overcome the world. Isn't that right? When you have courage, you can be still, quiet, and undisturbed. And then he says, no fear. The word fear means dread, terror, and to be afraid. No fear, no dread, no terror. Do not be afraid. This word fear points to an emotional and intellectual anticipation of harm. An emotional and an intellectual anticipation of harm. I just feel like something is going to go wrong. An emotional and anticipation. Emotional and intellectual anticipation of harm. Look at the hurricane coming off the tip of Cuba. Oh, I just feel like it's coming over to us. That's fear. Emotional and intellectual anticipation of harm. Do you remember when the children of Israel came out of Egypt? And remember when they came to the Red Sea and they were camped? The Red Sea was in front of them. The mountains were on each side of them. And Pharaoh was coming up behind them. And it looked like that there was no way out. And the people started scrambling, like a bunch of ants going no place, just scrambling all over the place. And Moses stood up and he said these two words, stand still, which pointed to a mental position. Get your mind quiet. Get your mind quiet. What happens when what is the first thing that happens to you when the enemy comes to shake you? Your mind. Your mind just starts spinning, running, wandering, shaking, trembling. It's all in your mind. All you need is an anticipation of something, not the reality of it. And your mind is taken off on it. But stand still. Get your mind quiet. Pull it back into the corral. Lasso that thing. Hog tie that thing. Pull it in. Stand still. No fear. Be calm. And he goes on to say here in verse 4, take care, be calm, and have no fear, and do not be faint-hearted because of these two stubs of smoldering firebrand. You know, I've been called some names before, but I have never been called a stub of smoldering firebrand. Don't tell me God don't call people names. Well, this is what God calls pressure. Pressure that comes against you. This is what God considers all pressure that comes against you. A stub of smoldering firebrand. Now, what is the word stub? When you think of the word stub, what do you think of? Something short, something small, okay? Broken off. Here's what the word stub means. It means the posterior part. It's your butt. He's calling them a butt. Don't be afraid of these butt heads. That's what he said. The posterior part. Why? Okay, Western society is altogether different than Eastern society. Okay, what's the highest part in Eastern society when it comes to dealing with people? In Eastern society, the head. What's the lowest part? The foot. And what's the part you just would really never touch? Exactly. And you never pointed at anybody. Because it's considered the part of lowest influence. The lowest influence. Okay? So, he's saying, don't be afraid of these two stubs. They're nothing but a butt with no influence. That's good, isn't it? All right? So, not only is it a butt, but it's smoldering. Okay. So, the word smoldering means it's all burned out. It's still smoking, but it's only smoke. All right? I'm trying to get through this. There is more of the smell of fire than there is fire because it's just smoke. There is no fire. The word smoldering also means a slug. A slug. Don't be afraid of these two slug butts. The word smoldering also means reduced and suppressed activity. It could harm you, except that it's all burned out. It can't harm you. So which just shows us that all the pressure that the devil wants to bring into your life is totally limited. It's totally limited. It is reduced and suppressed activity, whereas you're unlimited. But he's totally limited. And he calls them a firebrand. The word firebrand is used as the metaphor of two powerless and ineffective people that he's talking about here. Powerless and ineffective. These two powerless and ineffective slug butts. That's what he just said. And he says in verse 4, do not be faint-hearted because of them. Who's going to be faint-hearted over a powerless, ineffective slug butt? Who's going to be really, affected by that? If somebody come along and said, I'm going to get up here, I'm going to beat the living nonsense out of you, and I'm going to do it just as soon as I get up in about a half an hour. How many of you would be afraid of him? I mean, is that a slug or is that a slug? Come on. So here are these guys, these slug guys. They camped. They camped nearby them, and everybody's heart shook because these slugs have gotten too close. And God reminds them, they're slugs. They're the posterior end. They're ineffective and powerless. This is what God's reminding them of. Why God says, don't be faint-hearted. Don't be weak. Don't be soft. Have resolve and be strong in the face of danger. And it has to do with the inner person and our disposition. So if we're going to have an outward action of take care, be calm, and have no fear, we have to take an inner disposition first. And we base the inner disposition of not being faint-hearted, not being weak and soft, but having resolve and being strong in the face of danger, because we realize what we're facing. A burned out, powerless, ineffective slug butt. That's what I'm facing.